Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Controversial Issues. Today we're going to be discussing karate, yoga, and horoscopes, and whatever else we run into. Rabbi Coffman, good to have you back. How are you, sir?
Doing good.
Awesome.
Pleasure to be here, as always.
Yes, sir, indeed. It'll be interesting. Good topics today. Next week's going to be kind of hot, too. I guess I can just go ahead and throw it out there now so people can get ready for it. So next week's going to be discussing hunting and alcohol, drinking alcohol, that sort of thing. So, that'll ought to get some... it's actually important information people should know. I don't know all of it, so I'm kind of looking forward to what you've got to say about it, too. So, anyway... All right, let's see what we got here. We are live and rolling. Everything looks good. So let's get with it, man. First of all, how are you, man? How was your week going so far?
Doing good. We're getting a tremendous amount of rain here, which is exactly what we need. We probably got more rain. They said they got more rain in January, like in the last, 60 years or more. That got a tremendous amount of rain, which is good. I mean, always need more rain, but whatever. We're doing good. It's cold, rainy, exactly, the way it's supposed to be. As I told some people from England, I'm like, you should be loving this. This is your weather. This is your world. And they're like, no.
We'll pass.
Like, yeah, we left England, remember? It's like, oh, yeah, I forgot. But,
right.
This is England all year round. Cold, warm. Whatever. This is, dark, dreary. So it's good. It's, it's supposed to get cold. They were talking about snow.
Mm-hmm.
In Israel, if they talk a quarter of an inch, that's it. Shut down the whole city. So, but I haven't, not cold enough, not quite cold enough, but whatever. The rain's good. Makes you feel cold. It's,
it does.
have some hot cocoa, have a little bit of soup, keep you going. So
very
everything
good.
here is good.
Awesome. Well, let's kick this baby off then. So I guess we could start off with let's start off with the yoga. And first of all, I just threw in the last minute horoscopes because I think that kind of in my past growing up, I used to hear them almost hand in hand. So there's probably some sort of connection somehow. So anyway, I'll let you take this forward.
Went hand in hand with yoga, you mean?
Yes.
Or just in general with this type of thing?
Yeah, well, kind of with these types of things, but more with yoga than I have with other things. So not really sure why. So anyway, I'll let you take off.
All right. Yoga is interesting. Certainly interesting topic, interesting subject. There's a letter from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik Levrocha, may his name be blessed, that 1977 came out with a letter, actually came out with a few letters, basically saying that 100% yoga is forbidden, and by rabbinical authorities everywhere in America and Israel, that it was considered idolatry, right? Using these different stands or sitting positions or whatever we're going to see, right? Consider that 100% to be idolatry, and a person shouldn't do it. I mean, we'll clarify that. But he also mentioned, it was interesting, there's I think it was in that same year, 1977, that, or I could be wrong, I think that's what he meant, that there's a federal court ruling saying that such movements, by virtue of embracing such rites and rituals, are classified as cultic and religious movements. So there was a whole thing. There was a whole thing in court. So now we don't necessarily hold according to, what secular court says. Certainly, if it contradicts the Torah. But obviously, you have to live. You have to live. According to the land. The law of the land. What you're obligated to do. Again, comes in conflict with Torah. That's a whole nother. Well, that's a whole nother issue. I don't know if that's so controversial that I would have a show on it, but whatever. There's a whole thing about that. On the other hand, you could say 100% that the movements and things are idolatry, but they're also therapeutic. They also have a tremendous therapeutic value. They have nothing, totally irrelevant to religious worship or practice. So therefore, if it's therapeutic, what do I care what the source is? Right? In other words, if I'm gonna, get on my knees and sit in a position, and I'm not gonna mention what that position is, whether it's a dog position or another position or whatever, then in theory, in theory, it is, it should be okay. Now, again, you have to look at the therapeutic aspect of it, right? That's really, that's really the most important aspect. Doesn't really do anything, right? It does have, it does heal, right? Certainly true. And if a doctor prescribed it, for mental health, it can certainly help a person's mental health as well. So that should be an important, criteria. Now, the second issue, which is probably the more important issue, is the fact that it stems from a cult, stems from idolatry, which 100% would be a Torah, it would be forbidden. It would be forbidden, for that, to do it, even if it's going to promise, mental relief. One thing to keep in mind, one of the three things a Jew doesn't apply to a non-Jew, that a Jew has to give up their life for, is immorality, murder, right? The big three: immorality, murder, and idolatry, right? So if someone would come up to you and say, put a gun to your head, right? I guess in Texas could happen, right? A lot of guns there. So someone put a gun to your head and say, okay, bow down to this guy in a stick, right? Reference to JC, or a short little fat guy, right? Mr. Buddha, bow down to fatso or die. That's it. If you're a Jew, you got to give up your life. Now, what if you wanted to use this, something from idolatry, a holy wafer, incense, whatever it is that could heal you, right? In other words, you have some dreaded disease or who knows what, and you want to, and so, some doctor tells you, if you take this, right, this is gonna heal you. Right now, it was used for idolatry. If it's used for idolatry, doesn't matter. Not allowed to use it. I'm not allowed to derive benefit from it, even if a person needs this and he could potentially die. Right? Doesn't matter. You're not allowed to use idolatry for that. There was a famous case by John Wayne. Right? John Wayne was very sick, heart disease, and what did they put inside him? They put a pig's heart. Right? And whatever, he lived for a certain amount of time, eventually died. Would that be permissible? Right? We're totally off topic here. I'll just throw that in for a second. For a Jew, that would be okay. Right? Why? Because a pig's heart, a pig is not forbidden to get benefit from, in this sense. Idolatry is. Right? And idolatry speaks all over the place. Right? In the Torah, we see by this week's Parsha, Parsha's Yisro, Exodus chapter 20, right? We speak about idolatry, right? A number of times throughout the Torah. So even if it's going to promise mental relief, and then people can get sidetracked by getting involved in this cult, right? Or whatever, this idolatry, whatever it is. So now the question is, what if you can put that in a kosher way, right? If you could do it in a kosher way, well, maybe that would be all right. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote another letter, and he said it's clear that a Jew's life has to be sanctified for Torah, for mitzvahs. So therefore he said it's surprising and painful if a Jew's going to spend this precious time looking for greener pastures. Right, even if the intentions are good, even if it's going to help, their mental state. Now, if that is attached to idolatry, so what are we worried about? So you're gonna, a person's gonna go off and he's gonna use this to help them mentally, and if they help mentally, they may, dabble into it as well. You say, okay, I'm not gonna do that. What if it's used in a kosher way? It's not connected to anything particular to idolatry. So if that would be the case, right, then seemingly it should be permissible. Obviously, you have to ask your local Orthodox rabbi what to do. But if it's used in a way that there's no connection to idolatry, then seemingly there shouldn't be anything, wrong with it. Let's just get to the definition, right, of what yoga is. It's inherently connected to Hinduism, right? Translation from Sanskrit, its literal meaning is the union or connection, right? Union or connection. What does that sound like? Sounds like idolatry, right? The belief system in idolatry. And not only that, it's a holistic union of mind and body. And so that's why the movements are intrinsically connected, right, to the worship of things, i.e. nature, i.e. animals, even if it comes from God, right? Nothing's outside, God is in charge of everything in this world, right? Certainly as the Ramchal, Rabbi Chaim Coffman, Zecher Tzadik Levrochen, his epic work, Derech Hashem, the way of God, right, brings down clear as day, God is absolute, right? There's nothing outside of him.
So it's
Genesis
not.
chapter 1.
So it's
Yeah,
not
go ahead.
okay to meditate like on the just to think about the sunset and to think about the beauty of the sunrise and the clouds.
Right. There could be an issue with that, right? The question is, if you're thinking about, let's say halacha brings down that if you're in the bathroom, what are you allowed to think about? Right? People read science books, they read other things, whatever. But some people would have, let's say, pictures of animals, right? Just to keep your mind out of Torah.
Oh yeah,
that you're,
to distract you
in
from
other
thinking
words,
about Torah.
in the bath. I'm talking about in the bathroom, right? So
Right.
you're thinking about nature, right? You can think about the duties of the heart. The Rabbeinu B'chai and in Duties of the Heart says the person who wants to get closer to God, what does he do? He should think about that the God's in charge of nature, right? All the miracles of nature. In other words, the human body, all the miracles of the human body. When a person thinks about the miracles of the human body, you're not sitting going, meditating on that. But when you think about that, and you think about, let's say, an apple seed, in the DNA in an apple seed that gets planted, it gets watered, right? All things being equal, there's going to be a tree of apples, and it's pretty darn miraculous because it's got all that DNA. So someone will say, well, where'd the DNA come from? So of course, it's in the apple. Well, where'd the apple come from? Came from the seed. Where'd the seed come from? So God is nature.
Right.
God can change nature. So when you think about nature, that's not idolatry, right?
But
when you think about and that's miraculous, there's no question. But thinking about
so how can one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So how can one sit on their front porch, early in the morning with their cup of coffee and just sit back and just try to meditate on just being peaceful, and how can they safely just ponder and admire, the stars at night and the clear sky or the big bright moon?
You can do that. I'm not saying you can't do that. That is showing God's greatness in the world.
Okay.
Right? But you gotta be careful, that you're not saying that's outside of God. And that's outside of God controlling nature, because that's idolatry.
So if I know all this stuff, though, and I choose to, even though I know all this stuff, and I say, well, I'm going to do some yoga then, as long as while I'm meditating, I'm actually thinking of the Creator instead of other things. Maybe I'm thinking about, the sunset or something.
So
right?
we'll get there. We're going to get there.
Okay.
Now that being said, so you have worship. In this case, it can certainly be idolatry, worshiping animals, worshiping nature, etc. So what is the person doing during yoga? You're intending to connect, I guess in the ideal sense, you're connecting your soul to a breath of life, right? It's you're easing the body, in a different way. It's tremendously therapeutic, no question. So what's our obligation in this world? Right? Our obligation is that we're supposed to be, we try and imitate angels. Doesn't mean we worship them, right? One part of the service every day is when we say the Shemona Esrei, the silent meditation. There are 10 men there. We say what we call the holiness, the Kedusha. We say Kadosh, 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 right? That God is holy, right? Holy, holy, holy. And we lift ourselves up a little bit, right? From the palm of our feet. Why do we do that? We're imitating the angels. Doesn't mean we're worshiping them, but that's how they serve God, right? So that's one aspect of that. But the majority of the problem is, the main problem is that most of the poses, right, these yoga poses are named after animals, right? So according to this whole philosophy, the whole thing is a philosophy, right? And the philosophy is to connect to these animals through these poses and to emulate them. Now, we know in Hinduism, right? Well, if you don't know, I guess you find out now. Sad you got to find out from me. But a cow is considered holy and sacred, right? It's kind of interesting. I'm sure, some people tried, to do this when they were younger. What's the funniest thing to do with a cow? Is right. It sleeps standing up. So what do? You push it over. You go cow tipping. I mean, I never did it, but I guess people say either when you're high or smashed. I guess it's a lot more fun. But what's the fun of doing that? You push the cow, he can't get up because he's sleeping. I mean, I don't know. Cow's not the most the most intelligent animal in the world. Okay, but they in that part of the world they worship it. So the world of difference. In other words, if you're going to bend forward, right, you're going to bend your knees forward, and you're going to get in one of these positions, legs straight, arms straight, stretching the quads, stretching the calves, and all this, and you're going to call it a downward dog. Double D, a downward dog, right? That's the source. That's the goal to connect and to relate to this dog in thought, speech, and in action. Now, for a Jew to do that, again, you can say, well, what if I have out of mind, out of sight? I'm not thinking about this. Okay, I'm just pointing out where it comes from. So if a person did that, right, what are you doing? You're connecting, relating to dog in thought and speech. What do we call that? That's idolatry. That's idolatry 101A. Right? That for sure, a Jew not allowed to do any way, shape, or form. Now, some of these stretches, some of these movements in themselves are not problematic, right? In the context of yoga, right? You have some of them in other exercises, be it, pilates, bars, stretching, strength training, whatever it is. Person can be, stretched up the gazoo or whatever, but you're doing it for the sake of, the body, etc. So if a person does it in that sense, maybe it should be okay, right? Because stretches and movement are not poses, right? You're not sitting in a position. You're doing it for a few seconds, maybe a minute, half a minute, right? Yoga seems to be a whole different beast, right? The issue is you got one of these, some of these movements called the cow pose, a cobra pose, a camel pose, etc. So the names if you're using the names in general, that would be problematic, right? If you use the Hindu names, you call it, I don't even know how to pronounce it, I'm not even going to kill it, whatever, some type of twist or a half lord of a fish pose or something like that, right? That's much more problematic. That's exactly part of what they do. So maybe if I change the name, I don't have that in mind, right? Maybe that should be okay, right? A warrior pose, let's say, also relates to Hindu mythology. Right, that's in the stories about their most renowned being. Then the Bhagavad Gita, actually, I read once, don't remember much of it, but that is directly connected, connected to idolatry. So the question would be, okay, what about those poses and those things in stretching that you're doing for exercise or whatever, flexibility, strength, balance, or whatever? That should be okay, right? The issue is when you're going to call it by this Sanskrit name. Why? Because once you call it by name, then it's got stories behind it. It's got a whole philosophy. You can say, I don't believe in the philosophy. A short little fat guy can drop dead. Take a baseball bat, my Louisville Slugger, knock his head off. Who cares? Right? It shouldn't matter. But the fact that you mention it, right, it's similar to saying, the following. You can say, wow, this modern yoga is not like what went on, thousands of years ago. We're not thinking about that. There's no connection to that, right? That would be like saying that, a person would say, well, it's no problem to have a Christmas tree because it's no longer a Christian holiday. It's just an American fun day to get presents. That has nothing to do with the holiday. Sure. Then what do you have a tree for? What are you using it for? You're not saying, it's not like Thanksgiving, okay? Thanksgiving's turkey and football, not necessarily in that order, right? That's a custom. That was never a holiday. That was never anything religious, right? That even if you want to tell me, it's just, this is just what we do. We put up the tree. Why you put up the tree on that day or before, whatever, in that time? That's what it represents. So it's problematic from the root itself. Because even if you're going to say, well, we're more modern today, we're not using that philosophy, I'm not thinking that, but that's what it represents, right? So therefore you can't say, well, I'm going to use this position, but I'm not thinking about that. And it doesn't mean that, right? We've changed. We're more modern. We're much more modern, so who cares? Why should it matter? Right? But it should matter because of what it stands for, right? So therefore, that would be an issue, right? But you have to take on, you have to ask another question, right? Well, very good. Answer one question, we'll ask another question, and that is, let's say someone wants to do yoga, and they want to do it in a kosher style. They want to call it kosher yoga. Now, what's that definition? All right, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? It's going to take us out of this problem. The issue is it's going to be a lot of misinterpretation, going to be a lot of mistakes, right? And you could have this being offered, let's say, at a local synagogue or a Jewish community center or whatever the case is, and they'll say, okay, we have it, yoga's okay. So I can say, listen, we're not going to say the names of the poses. We're not going to think of what it really means. We're just going to do it to stretch and to do other things. Stretching other things not an issue. Once you put yourself in that position, right, even if it's going to be therapeutic, that's, that would be the issue. And over here we're talking, that is a pretty serious thing, right? Because you have no basis to understand what the other context is. Right? You can't say, well, it's out of mind, out of sight, we're more modern, we're not thinking about it. Because the whole thing, the whole base of it is idolatry. So there's another issue within this also, which is also a pretty serious issue. And that issue is called Mar Zayin. Now, Mar Zayin means somebody sees you do something, right? In other words, something appears to be non-kosher, even though it's not, right? Even though it's not, but others understand it differently, and it could lead to breaking actual Jewish law. So an example is someone sees a rabbi eating in a non-kosher restaurant, right? They see him in a non-kosher restaurant, see him at McDonald's. What's he doing at McDonald's? Thought he was going to pass out. He went to get a cup of water. He's drinking a cup of water in a plastic cup, not even using maybe it's one of their cups, whatever it is, plastic cup. No problem to drink water in a plastic cup. But what's the problem? A Jewish person walking by sees this rabbi in a McDonald's. What's he going to think? He's like, oh, must be kosher. Must be allowed to eat McDonald's. Because, come on, McDonald's isn't kosher. Everybody knows McDonald's isn't kosher. So how could they make that mistake? This is what Mar Zayin is. In other words, somebody sees something, and what's really going on seems to be forbidden, right? But it's taken out of context, right? And since it's taken out of context, people are going to say, oh, the Torah must permit it, right? It must be okay. So the issue is going to be, over here with yoga, if we don't have really a true form of kosher yoga, which I don't think really exists too much, right? But even a practice of it, even if it's removed from idolatrous connections, what's it going to give the impression? It's going to give the impression that's okay. That yoga in and of itself is okay. Now, let's say they strip it down, right? No animal poses, no animal nothing, no Sanskrit names, whatever, stretching, different things, whatever. Even if that's the case, someone coming along and say, oh, it's yoga, it must be no problem. Must be no problem, within Judaism. And there are a number of things that people may see, as we mentioned, that a person can see and say, oh, I think this is permissible. One thing, this might sound a little bit far-fetched. Let's say someone washed clothing before the Sabbath, right? Before Shabbos. So what do? It's nice and warm out. I mean, not now. It depends where you are in the world. But let's say on Shabbos, you now go, you say, oh yeah, I left it open. I left the washing machine open and I can't use the dryer. So what do I want to do? I want to dry it. So I take the clothes and I put them on my line, right? Or I put them on whatever, I put them outside. I put them outside to dry. What's the problem? Technically, there's nothing wrong with it. As long as you don't squeeze out the wet clothing or whatever, you shouldn't have an issue. But what's the issue? The issue is you put it out there, someone's going to say, oh, must be permissible to wash clothes. Look, they're hanging out clothes, right? They're hanging out clothes on the line. But they washed it before Shabbos, right? They didn't wash it on Shabbos. Someone could make the mistake.
So
right?
in other words,
if somebody put it...
So in other words,
Yeah,
if
go
no
ahead.
one is there to witness, if you live in the woods and you don't have any neighbors, then it wouldn't be a big deal. Or if you live in the city and you've got a big 6-foot tall fence and everybody else is in one-story homes, there's no way they could see into your yard and you're doing it, it wouldn't matter. But if there's a chance of somebody witnessing you,
Right.
that's when it becomes a problem.
Right, but what you could also put up a sign. You make a sign before Shabbos. I did not wash these clothes on the Sabbath.
There you go. I see what you mean. That makes
You
sense.
can do that also,
Yeah.
but the rabbis say it doesn't matter. It's still giving people the wrong idea, and therefore, even if you did that, it's still going to be forbidden, right? So you don't want to give an impression of, you don't want to give rabbinic supervision,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, on something that's highly controversial. There has been over the years rabbinic supervision that that the rabbi said, okay, you can listen to this type of music. What makes music kosher? How can you have rabbinic supervision on music, right? Right, some people just sounds like, rock and roll with Jewish lyrics. So how can you say that's okay? Well, the lyrics are okay. Yeah, what about the music? What about the beats? What about the rap?
Mm-hmm.
What about other things? You open up a Pandora's box. If you would ask most people, I would think, I could be wrong, but I would think most people, when it comes to yoga, do they really know what the base of yoga is? I don't know, maybe some people do. Right, but I don't think a lot of people do, right? So if they wouldn't, so who cares? So I would say, okay, so they're making a pose that, they don't think it's an animal. They think it's this whatever pose, and it helps them, clear out their mind, clean their body. Everything's good, right? So, for them, it shouldn't be an issue, right? But the problem is going to be is how other people are going to look at it. Because just, if you have the base behind it, and the whole base is like a stack of dominoes, and it's all bad, so it doesn't matter what I turn it into now, right? A similar case, I mentioned about music, so I just hit that for one split second. Are you allowed to use, let's say, secular music with the Jewish theme? Can you take Psalms and put a secular beat to it? Right? There are people who've done it, right? It doesn't seem like it's a good thing to do, but, certainly people have done it. Now, by doing such a thing, right? Are you saying that now? What are we doing? Are we now saying that music is kosher because I put Jewish words to it? I put some of the Book of Psalms in there. I put some Psalms in there, and now all of a sudden it's okay, right? So some people are very much against any of this type of music, right? Using it unless it's used in a holy way, but to use it for rock and roll or whatever you want to call whatever type of music, whatever type of music should be problematic. But you're going to tell me there's plenty of musicians out there that have plenty of good beats, rock and roll beats to Jewish themes, right? And not only that, to Torah words, to Psalms, Shir HaShirim, to Song of Songs, right? So there are people, jumping up and down and saying, it's never been a good thing, and it's not a good thing. But, these people aren't starving. There's certainly, haven't been cast aside. Right, so you see that there, unfortunately or unfortunately, that there's a need, but obviously there has to be a boundary, right? No one's saying you can't exercise, right? That would be like, that would be also, heresy because okay, you can't exercise. The Rambam says you got to keep the body, you got to keep the body running. You got to, you definitely have to exercise. In some communities, exercise might be a four-letter word, but in general, exercise is good for the body. Right, this can clear the mind. Tremendous thing, but you have to realize what you're using it for and what the whole base is. And if the whole base is something that is totally forbidden, then it could be whatever I use it for. How can I make that kosher now? Because the whole base of what it represents, right? Even if you say nobody uses it that way, it doesn't matter. It's still the same base. Go back to your Christmas tree. I'm just, whatever. This is what we do. It's it's really a secular thing. By a lot of people, it is. Right? Some people more, some people less. Whatever it is. But you're not going to tell me it's not a Christian symbol.
Mm-hmm.
You want to say it's a pagan thing, whatever. No one is going to make that mistake and say, it just so happens we do it during this time. Joey Suzu, he's lying. It's not true. It's part of the whole thing.
Right.
Right? It doesn't matter what spin you put it on. When you put on it, yeah.
All right. So you, I'm your time clock. You're 30 minutes in. We got to cover. Almost said karaoke. Karate. Maybe we should throw karaoke in there. I don't know. Just kidding.
Right.
So karate, and cover more on the horoscope thing.
Okay.
However you want to do it.
Horoscope things come at the end. That'll be the quickest thing.
Okay, cool.
So karate. Now we'll get to an issue that I'm sure no one ever thought of, because the real issue, by karate, is about using this, using certain sources of power, right? Inner source of power, right? Or whatever it is. It's much more. It's much more of bringing customs based on witchcraft and other things, right? That's really the main issue, that I'm sure you wanted to hit. So I'm going to hit that at the end.
Yeah,
yeah.
Just like I did on the other stuff, I want to also make sure that is there a kosher way to learn karate? Let's say somebody just wants to learn the moves so they can defend themselves, right? That sort of thing.
Right.
Okay.
So what's the main issue, right? The main issue, you'll tell me, is, well, it's based in witchcraft and other things, and, using certain names of God to get other power, etc. Yeah, that's a problem, right? That is definitely a problem. Could be used in a kosher way, not saying not, but there's a bigger issue. The bigger issue is, even for competition, right? And we'll get into contact sports. How are you allowed to hit somebody? There's a prohibition. You can't hit someone in excess, meaning that self-defense. I'm allowed to defend myself, right? But how am I allowed to be in competition? Right? I shouldn't be allowed to be in competition. I shouldn't be allowed to be in any contact sport, right? Am I allowed to play football, rugby, right? Any of these things, Australian football, right? Because the issue is, when it came to corporal punishment, right? Person transgressed a negative prohibition. They got lashes, right? They would get lashes. So if they got, the rabbinical court would have to see how much the person can take, whatever, give them a certain amount of lashes. But if they gave them one more lash than they were capable of taking, that's equivalent to assault and battery. In other words, the lashes that were supposed to be given were exact, right? They had to be exact. If you gave more, one more, doesn't really matter. How many more? That's an excess. Right? That would be a Torah prohibition. So somebody in this case, it should be, if they are, in competition, right? You're hitting someone else. Not only that, but even if you don't hit them, you raise your hand. Even if a person raises their hand, but they don't hit somebody, they're called evil. You're going to say, what's the source for that? We see it by Moshe. See it by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu sees two Jews fighting. And he says to one of them, evil one, why are you going to hit your friend? He didn't hit him. Talking about Datan and Aviram, right? So over there, he didn't even hit him. So over there, we learn how David's about to hit him, but he didn't do so. He's called evil, right? What if he hits him?
But he had, intent to hit him.
You might say they're fighting with self-defense, but what if it's done willingly? Right? Are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to cause pain to someone else? Right? That's the question here. Right? So it comes on the Rambam. The Rambam says the person who hits in a destructive manner, that's going to be the main key here.
Okay, now I'm going to throw you something, a strange curveball, okay?
Yeah.
So you're allowed to hurt somebody if you're actually helping them, right? So
we're going to get there, right? Yeah.
Right, but the point being,
a surgeon.
If I'm not a surgeon and my son gets a splinter shoved in his finger, and I have the ability to pull it out, even though I'm not a surgeon, it's going to hurt him by me pulling it out, but it's better for him.
Right.
So, okay, likewise, now let's take this one step further. Let's say that you are doing karate, or let's say that you're a boxer, right? By you inflicting pain on the other, you're essentially making that person a better boxer, because they're seeing their weaknesses. They're going to learn how to sort of toughen them up more. So anybody could really take it deep and justify it to where it's really intellectually sound. So kind of
Yeah, but the problem is, what if you cause injury?
right. So what if
What if you cause?
what if
Yeah.
when I was pulling the splinter out of my son's hand and I was trying to grab it, but actually jabbed it in further? Let's say it was a metal splinter and it stabbed him in his bone and created an infection. That's an accident. It's an accidental pain. So, I guess when you're boxing, you're trying to knock somebody out or whatever.
Right. No, if you're trying to help somebody,
Yeah.
let's say like a surgeon, which I was going to get to, right? A surgeon has to operate even if it causes pain.
Right.
There is one issue I'll just point out, is one
Okay.
small side issue. What if let's say a son is a doctor, right, or is a dentist, right? Is he allowed to treat his parents because he could cause them to bleed? Right? Can make them. You're not allowed to make a wound in anyone, certainly not your parents. Right? The whole question.
Right.
The whole question. But you're helping them. Right? But the question is, they'll say, "Okay, I'll take the pain. You just do it." Right? So that's going to be crucial over here. If what you're doing, is constructive, or it's destructive. Because if your intent is to hurt the person, right? Certainly, boxing, your intent is to hurt them. No question. Not to make them better. You want to beat them, right? You want to pulverize them. You want to knock them out, right? Not just on points. You want to nail them. You want to knock them out. That's destructive, right? Or if your intent is constructive, you're engaging in the game, right? It's not necessarily destructive. Or you teach someone how to defend themselves, right? That should be okay. Now, the question is going to be so in order to show how it's going to be permissible, we'll ask the following question. If you tell somebody, I want you to break my arm or leg, right? I give you permission, 100%, I want you to break my arm or leg. Now, if they say, let's say the person says, and if you do it, I promise you, I'll sign a document, I will never go after you. I'm never going to sue you. Probably lying, but he says, I'm never going to sue you. Is he allowed to do that? You're still not allowed to do it because it's a transgression. You're causing someone damage, even if he allows you to. You have to pay damages. Now, if it's something that's temporary, right, a temporary injury, so someone's going to be much more lenient. If it's permanent, you're not going to let it go. So if it's something like a pain or a bruise, or you say, break my glasses, tear my clothing, or something like that, you're exempt. You're exempt from damages. Why? Because you're never going to sue them for that. So someone asked, raised Rabbi of the last generation, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Devrocha, may his name be blessed. I asked him the following question. It was by a Jewish football player. Asked him, am I allowed to play football? Why? What's the question? I could injure someone, or they could injure me. Right? So Moshe Feinstein said it's okay. Why? Because normally you don't cause permanent injury, even though that may be disproved today. Right? Certainly could be disproved today, because a lot of them do have permanent injury. Nonetheless, you know full well what you're getting yourself into. And you're saying explicitly, even if I get injured, I am not going to sue you. Now, if a person hits someone dirty, right? What happened, a number of years ago, someone got clipped, got the helmet into the back, became paralyzed. All right, it was a cheap shot. Total cheap shot. Yeah, something like that I could see person could sue for. Right? But in general, if they get injured, in general, they're going to forego it. In other words, they don't have to say it explicitly. So if it's something temporary, everyone's going to agree. They go in knowing that I could get temporarily injured, or I could injure somebody else, right? But they give in on that. They're not saying, well, if it happens, I'm going to sue you. It's part of the game, right? It's definitely part of the game. But if it's something permanent, that they're not going to forego, right? That they could take them to, a Jewish court of law. Because at the end of the day, what's the problem? Problem is our body's not considered our possession. We have an obligation to take care of it. So if you spill, your own blood, God's going to seek punishment, right? A person commits suicide, your body's not your own. So therefore, we would say a person's got to distance themselves from a situation that's harmful. So in that case, being a football player, rugby, a boxer, how would you be allowed to do that? So again, if a person, let's say, does work, right, you're obligated to pay his wages. There's an obligation according to the Torah. You're going to pay the wages the same day. Why? Because the wages that you give him is like his soul. It's like you're giving to his soul. So you have to give him his soul back. He worked for you. You got to pay him. Right? If a person, now, what happens if a person has a dangerous occupation? Right? Person, chops trees down, climbs up a tree. Right? Person paints, could be dangerous, fall off a ladder, an electrician. So Moshe Feinstein now, certainly for making a living, not a problem. Person can put themselves in somewhat danger to do that. Right? So too, the one who's giving up their life for the sake of the wage is also okay. Now, what about playing football? Right? You're making a living, right? Trying to make a good living, right? By doing that. So that should be okay. Right? In other words, you have 100% consented. And once you've consented, then you're saying that's part of my livelihood. Right? Now, what if football or any contact sport or martial arts, now we'll get to martial arts, right? What if you're doing it for health? You're not doing it for making a living. You're doing it for self-defense. You're doing it for health reasons. Is that valid? Well, the Rambam states clear, we mentioned, that to keep the body healthy, the mitzvah, right? Why do you see a lot of, Orthodox men overweight and whatever? Okay. We have what to do. You got to keep the body, running. Right? Nonetheless, there's another issue. Right? The other issue that we mentioned, right, is that you are participating in a pagan practice, right, when it comes to martial arts, because where's the origin? Right? The origin is an Eastern religion. Totally an Eastern religion. Practices, beliefs, that should be forbidden. Why should it be forbidden? Torah tells us not only not to do idolatry, but not to go in the ways of the non-Jews. Right? Maybe you shouldn't play football for that reason either, but okay. Going in the way of the non-Jews, certainly for this reason, should be forbidden. Right? Sure, certainly should be forbidden. Now, what's the issue? Right? Well, what does it mean to go in the way of the non-Jews? Right? It's one of the great rabbis, Moshe in his glosses on Shulchan Aruch, says it's only forbidden to go in the ways of the pagans if it's based on sexual immorality. Or it's a statute of their religion. Right? This is crucial. It has no logical reason. You're doing it because it's a leap of faith. Not that it makes sense. If it has tangible benefit for a person, the bottom line is then it should be okay. So an example here is person can't sleep so well. So what do? You go to a pagan doctor and he says, you take this and it has glass over it. And if you put it over your eyes and you say, okay, Google the God of glass, it's going to bless you and you're going to be able to see. Now, obviously, you're not doing that for that reason because it doesn't make any sense, right? Glasses, are going to change the focus. They're going to work to adjust the problem, the focus on your eyes. Now, if there's a logical reason as to why it's going to work, so this pagan doctor can go jump in a lake, right? Who cares? Doesn't matter what his crazy reason is. If I put the glass on my head, right? He says the God of glass is going to heal you. Okay, that's forbidden. That's not tangible. But if I put the glass on my head and there's a tangible reason why it helps and helps me focus and all that, and I can see better, doesn't matter what the pagan witch doctor says, right? He can say whatever he wants, totally irrelevant, because I'm basing it on something that is tangible. If it's something that's tangible, doesn't matter what Mr. Witch Doctor says. He can say it 100 times, different ways, this, that. It's not going to matter. If it's not tangible, and a person's doing it for that reason, that's totally forbidden. Right? 100% forbidden. Now, back to our martial arts here. Ninjutsu, right, is the art of assassination, or assassination, I guess. Some customs are based in witchcraft. Person holds his hands in a certain way, right? You put an incantation on someone. That's forbidden, right? 100%. That would be forbidden, Because if you're doing something like that and now you're putting like a hex on someone or whatever, right, that has no rational explanation, right? Just because a person held their hands in a certain position, and according to them, it does this and that, and it's gonna make you stronger and whatever. You're gonna say this incantation. That's what we call in Yiddish a baba mice. It's nothing, right? It doesn't make sense. No rational explanation. That you're not allowed to do. Totally not allowed to do. If there's a tangible benefit, if I hold my hands in a certain way, it's going to help me with this and that, but it's tangible, I can do it. Right? Karate and Taekwondo. Also stylized fights. How are the moves done? In a slow motion. Now, why would that be okay? It's okay because it's slow exercise. It's tangible. It helps the body. Something that's real. Right? That would be okay. Now, some say, doing this based on the pagan gods, like this Kali, the god of war, and he said if you do this and you do that, then, you're going to have, X results. Now, would I be allowed to do that? If it's got a tangible benefit, I'd be allowed to do it. Who cares what this stupid god of war says? You're going to do this and you're going to do that. Well, I think it's a piece of dirt. I think he's scum of the earth. I would even shop here. Go ahead, blow it up. Who cares? Relevant. Totally irrelevant. Tai Chi. Type of inner source of power.
Good one, by the way.
Huh?
That's a nice drop in, by
right?
the way.
Another Cobra reference. Right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Tai Chi is a type of inner source of power. Question is, does it exist? Right? Does it really exist? We don't know. Right? Not clear. Does exist, doesn't exist, whatever. But the exercise, if you're doing it, should be fine. You want to call it a power, you want to call it a force. If it's tangible, I don't have an issue. Now, we're speaking about this tangible thing for a while. What is it exactly? It means that if logic would help even without evidence, right? If it would be a logical thing, even if I don't have to prove it, I don't have to bring statistics, I don't have to show anything, but logically it makes sense, then it will help, then it's fine. If there's a statistical logic, even if I don't understand it, but still statistically it makes sense, then I'm still allowed to do it, right? If it wouldn't make sense, and I'm basing it on something else, that would be forbidden. Now, there's one other aspect of karate, tai chi, all these things. What about bowing to the other person? Right? Everybody bows, right? Sign of, honor, respect, whatever it is, right? Is that okay? Right? That's fine. Why is it fine? Because you don't prostrate yourself. You're not on all fours, right? You're not bowing down. That would be an issue, right? But over here, you're just bowing. You're bowing over. So if I do a half bow, right, it shouldn't be a problem. What does it compare to? It's kind of funny in a certain way when I thought about it. It's, a person bows, it's like you're shaking hands, right? That's really what it is, considered. Now, it doesn't matter what the philosophy is behind it. It's just, a show of respect. Fine. As long as I'm not on all fours, I'm not bowing down because prostration is going to be forbidden, right? That is, a major thing in idolatry, right, is bowing down. That would be forbidden, right? Technically, it's really forbidden, in front of an idol. Like what would happen, you had a $100 bill. You had a $100 bill, of course this is going to happen. It falls right before an idol, right? So you want to bend down and pick it up. Well, even if you don't hold by the idol, even if you would kick it in the teeth, you're not allowed to bend down and pick it up. Because that's a form of worshiping, to be a Torah prohibition, even if you don't have intention. Even if you say, hey, this short little fat thing, I don't care, I'll kick it in the head, I'll knock it over, I'll pulverize it. Doesn't matter. Once you bend down, right, that's a form of idolatry. So what do? So the best way to do it, if possible, you're going to tell me it's like you got to turn yourself into Twister to be able to do it. It's like you have to turn your back to this idol. You can crouch down and do it because that's not the way you serve. That's totally not the way you serve. Like stick your butt in front of the idol and try and do it that way, right? And that would get you 100%, out of the problem. But you're going to tell me, well, it's very hard to do that. I can't do that, whatever. But if it's in front of an idol, what do you do? Drop $100 in front of an idol. Should have been more careful, right? In any case, it's, this, so bowing over here, a half bow is considered 100% like like a handshake. So that is the idea behind karate or contact sports. The last thing you gave me 35 seconds, right, for horoscopes, right? You want to deal with horoscopes?
Yeah, you got 35 seconds plus 9 minutes. Go for it.
Plus 9. There you gave me 9 minutes. So generous, unbelievable. That's why I love the show. I keep coming back. Horoscopes in general, looking into the stars, trying to figure out the way the stars are lined up, etc., right, has impact. It does if you know how to read the stars, right? Stargazing was a real thing. I mean, there probably some people out there still know how to, know how to do it. Torah says you're not allowed to, right? Because it can show the future, right? It can show the future. There are stories in the Torah itself. Avram looks up to the stars, and he sees, according to the stars, that there's no possible way he's ever going to have children with Sarah. So God said, don't worry about it. Your progeny going to multiply like no tomorrow. You're going to have kids. But Avram says, but according to the stars, he says, forget the stars. You're above the stars. And he changes their names, and he changes Sarah's nature miraculously. Moshe Rabbeinu, same thing. Doesn't want to go to Egypt, right? He looks up in the stars. He sees what's going on. He sees an angel of God and an angel of the Egyptians, right? Each nation had their own angel to plea, in front of the heavenly court for different things. And he saw both angels attached one to another like a double helix, like a DNA molecule. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm not going there. You're going to send me to Egypt? They're never going to get out. 100 times out of 100, they never get out. There's no underdog. It doesn't happen. So God says, Mo, what are you worried about? I can change nature. I created it. I'm above it. So when I take the Jews out, I'm going to take them above nature. That's why you have the miracles. That being said, looking at the stars is a real thing, right? Horoscopes today don't really mean much. You want to tell me people looking at the stars, putting this in, where they're getting it from? I couldn't tell you. People tell you shouldn't look at it anyway, right? Because, maybe it's similar, to stargazing, and they're giving you this information and who knows what, right? But in the end, most rabbinical authorities will tell you it's totally worthless. It doesn't mean anything or whatever. Now, the question is going to be, what if you read your horoscope and it says, today is not your lucky day. Don't get out of bed. Don't pass go. Don't collect 200. You are going to have a very bad day. So what does the person do? Calls in sick. And say, you know what? I'm not taking any chances. That's forbidden. That you're not allowed to do.
Right.
That you're not allowed to give that any credibility. If you say, well, if the bread fell from his mouth and it means this and it means that, or a black cat ran in front of you, or, you walked under a ladder, all these things means nothing. Right? Zero. If it so happened you walked under a ladder and you didn't realize it was a rickety ladder and it fell on you, you should have been more careful. That's what it means.
Right.
Right?
That's funny.
You went against the 615th commandment. Don't be a moron. Don't walk in front of a ladder like that. Make sure it's sturdy. Right? But in the end, if you give it any credibility, right? That's forbidden. But there's a whole question by the servant of Abraham, by Eliezer, when he goes to get a wife for Yitzchak, right? And he says that this, if the woman comes and she does this and she does that, I'm going to know she's the right one. And then all of a sudden, boom, that's exactly what happened, right? The commentaries ask, what's going on? You can't rely on omens, right? Omens are forbidden, right? Totally forbidden. So you could tell me it wasn't Jewish, doesn't matter, right? It was before the giving of the Torah.
We still have the fleece situation as well. That's the same thing.
Right. So you can tell me it won't matter. It's before the giving of the Torah and all that. Fine. Right? But the commentaries ask, but even so, he worked by Abraham. How could he have done it? Right? The commentaries answer that, that was in his mind, but, that wasn't what he was relying on 100%. Right? He said, if I see this and I see that, then I know she's the right one. But not like, well, if I see other things or whatever, it's going to nullify it.
You can't say that about Gideon. I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing. In fact, he wasn't even sure, so he tried it a second time.
All right, but I'm saying, relying on omens, relying on these type of things, right? For a Jew, 100% is forbidden.
Gotcha.
Right? These things have no meaning whatsoever. In other words, if God wanted you to get clocked over the head by a ladder, you'll get clocked over the head by a ladder, or something else will happen. Any number of things. I remember a few months ago, I was up north on Shabbos. So whatever, they had a lot of chickens there, other things there, whatever. I was walking, whatever. I was on my way to synagogue. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, I mean, I live in a place, there's no animals. No animals there, right? Most communities don't have. This is like, further up north, near Tiberias. Anyway, two chickens, like go darting, out from an alley or something, like scared the absolute wits out of me. It wasn't like I was broad daylight, right? It wasn't an issue, but like it came out of nowhere, it gave me a heart attack. And I was like, oh, it's only chicken. Like, no big deal, right? But if a person puts stock, in these type of things, even if you say, like some of the commentaries say by Job, what happened to him was based on the way, the stars were set up, right? Mm-hmm. We're not subservient to the stars. Even if the stars are set up in a certain way, we can overcome them with a lot of work. Takes a lot of work for a Jew to overcome that, right? Even if he's under some sort of whatever, however the stars would be set up, and it's going to be bad for you like this and like this, doesn't mean it's going to happen. I mean, it could happen. It's probable it could happen, right? But in the end, we're not subservient to that. We can change that, right? So all these omens, all these different things, a person wants to get caught up in them. You can get caught up in them. For a Jew, 100% forbidden. They mean nothing. And if something's supposed to happen and God wants it to happen, 100% that's what it's going to be. But it has nothing to do with, I saw a black cat. I saw William wearing that stupid hat. Like, come on. Like, I saw that hat in a dream, and it must mean that I should never, I shouldn't get out of bed, or I should never do this show again. Right? That's what it could mean. Right? But God's going to say, you just thought about the hat. Mm-hmm. It was just the hat. It was the shirt. Like, what are you worried about? It had nothing to do with anything. Move on. So that's what a lot of people ask about dreams, right? In 30 seconds, most dreams don't mean anything either. Right. We don't take dreams seriously unless a person, let's say, God was giving someone prophecy, or he's a king or something like that, and God has to give him information. Most people dreams, I get this question a lot. They say, this happened, that happened. The Talmud speaks about it, a lot of things. If you've seen a dream this, if you've seen a dream that, this and that. But the Talmud also says 99% means zero. Right. If it comes back a second time, a third time, yeah, it could be significant. It could be you are getting some sort of message. But in general, most dreams, don't really mean anything at all.
Most of the people I've talked to in my history have the dreams and stuff that they do have. They're influenced by their surroundings. Sometimes they don't even realize it, and then but just through talking to people, they'll tell me the dream, and I'll ask them, after I get done with 100 questions, I finally find what caused it, and I'm like, well, there you go.
Well, the third question should be, are you on drugs? Yeah. Do you take any drugs?
Yeah.
Do you drink too much?
That's
okay. There we are.
That's
We're
so
good.
True. Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Okay, cool. Well, it looks like we are out of time, sir. So until next week. So next week's going to be hunting and drinking. Not necessarily in that order.
And if you wanted to get ticked off, that is the week to come.
That's the one.
Because I guarantee you're not going to like it.
That's funny. All right. Well, you guys, thank you all for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you guys again. Same time, same place, Hashem willing, next week, if all goes well. So I'm trying to find something I cannot find. Where is it? There it is right there. There you are. You were hiding from me. Anyway, okay, so have a great week, Rabbi, and have a great week, folks. Love you guys, and we'll see you soon. Next show is happening in 1 hour for Testimonials, so we will see you soon. Peace out, everybody.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד.